Hey everybody, welcome to a moment of clarity. The stage is set for the October surprise that could very well be an attack of some sort on Venezuela. This is something you won't get in your mainstream media. Big surprise, there's something they just happen to miss. But it seems things are heating up against Venezuela. Trump would find it useful to do this leading into the election. This could be one of several October surprises. Trump's kind of basis for reality is just endless surprises and chaos. It's easier to rule under chaos because people can't actually create any sort of regular sustained defense against the attacks of anything because it's too chaotic. But this is from an article. Ben Norton's also been talking about, the journalist Ben Norton, but this is from an article from the Orinoco Tribune talking about how the hybrid war against Venezuela has been intensifying as the U.S. presidential campaign is heating up. Hybrid war, as many of you know, is what it sounds like. It's war in many different ways, not just full-on attacks, which I've already talked about, the ridiculous attempted invasion that the U.S. and U.S. mercenaries did several months back, easily stopped by the Venezuelan Navy. But that's a traditional attack, right, with guns and bombs and things like that. Then there's kind of electronic virtual attacks, shutting down power grids, which has also been done to Venezuela, likely by U.S. or U.S.-backed sources for that. Then there's propaganda attacks that's been going on against Venezuela by the U.S. for years now. Then there's economic attacks. That's another one that is done aggressively. And in each of these regards, things have been heating up leading into the American election because it is useful, as I said at the beginning. So I'm going to go into some of the details of how we know the stage is being set for some sort of even larger attack on Venezuela. One is that Trump actually said it in a speech. I don't know if it was a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. He in Florida, he literally said that something, I don't know if he used the word important or something significant is going to happen in Venezuela. He said something cryptic. Now, Trump says a lot of bullshit, but it almost seems like less bullshit when he's holding back. When he says something cryptic, when he doesn't just say, hey, I fucking hate that person. When it's not just straightforward, then you're like, oh God, what would make Trump hold back? That's fucking horrifying. But so here's some other than Trump literally saying it, here are some other details of this. And again, no mention of anything about this in the mainstream media. The closest you'll get is just standard propaganda against Venezuela, which I'll talk more about that in a minute. The latest propaganda against Venezuela. But the article says the U.S. naval deployment to Venezuela's maritime border is about to begin its 5th month. Many of you may not even know this, that literally the U.S. Navy is off of Venezuela's border, which in normal times from normal countries would be very close to an act of war. You don't just sit your war vessels outside of a country. I mean, imagine if Iran just decided to put tanks in Mexico on the border of the U.S. That kind of thing is frowned upon. Tends to make countries angry, pissed off, and usually people end up dying. So not the best idea, but for the U.S. it's normal. This is normal for us to try and create war with countries. So the U.S. naval deployment to the Venezuela's maritime border beginning its 5th month. Even the few Democrats in Congress willing to criticize Trump's Venezuela policy have said nothing about this deployment, perhaps because it is entirely normal for the United States to threaten war on a country and then dock its Navy right outside. You hardly hear about this from your mainstream media. They, New York Times or whatever has probably mentioned that the U.S. Navy is off of Venezuela's border, but they don't act like there's a problem with that. No, why would there be a problem with the most belligerent, warlike, fucking murderous country in the world to be outside of every country? Why is that a problem? I don't understand. So here's some more information about how the stage is set for an October surprise. Basically, the U.S. is also working with Venezuela's neighbors, largely U.S. puppet regimes, our allies, working with Venezuela's neighbors to put pressure on Venezuela to try and, crush them, collapse their society, whatever you can do to harm them as much as possible. By them, I don't mean just the leaders of Venezuela. I mean the actual people. The U.S. government and our allies want to watch people starve, die of medical problems, all those things. Whatever we can do to just make life miserable for your average Venezuelan, that's what we're doing. And that's how you know that it's not legitimate when the U.S. says we need to help them and save them by giving them democracy. Because if that were true, then you wouldn't be okay with just fucking with their people, like killing poor people there. But we're fine with it. We're totally cool with it. So August 27th, the Colombian court authorized a U.S. military unit to restart its advising mission. The U.S. is advising Colombia on how to help their Venezuelan neighbors. Right, advising. The only way the U.S. ever advises someone is how to commit war crimes. That's what we're very good at and how we advise countries. Just like the mafia. This would be like if the local barber shop had the mafia advising them on their barber business, on their hair cutting business. Yeah, we brought in the mafia to tell us how to cut hair. That's what Colombia is saying right now. They brought in the U.S. military for their advising mission. Here's another step in the setting the stage for the October surprise attack on Venezuela. The U.S. has seized 2 tankers of fuel purchased by Venezuela. They seized those 2 tankers on August 14th. Venezuela desperately needs fuel because it is an oil-rich country that we will not allow to use its oil. We have done everything we can to economically crush them, to stop their oil processing, to make it impossible for them to sell their oil. So, the U.S. has made them desperately need oil to help their people and continue to run their society. And so they're getting much of it from Iran. That should be fine, right? In a legitimate world where we respect nations' ability to survive and do what they need, then a business between Iran and Venezuela should be fine. But we've decided to create economic war against both these countries. And so we've put sanctions on Iran, sanctions on Venezuela. And so now it's incredibly tough for Venezuela to get that oil. So we have seized 2 of their tankers of fuel that they purchased, which to a lot of other countries would be an act of war. You can't just pirate their shit and expect it not to come back to haunt you. Like, for all the stuff we do to China, we rarely just steal their tankers because they have the power to fight back against us. Venezuela is not as powerful as China, so we've just started stealing their shit. Because we're hoping that if they lack oil, their people will start dying, start starving. That will help us overthrow their government. Now, I won't spend this whole episode explaining why we want to overthrow their government, but mainly because they nationalized the oil resources, which means that rather than a small number of oligarchs getting the money from the oil, it went to the people. And we are not okay with that here in America. We are not okay with that oil revenue not going to a tiny number of oligarchs. That's one of the reasons, but there are many. Since the revolution in Venezuela, poverty has been cut by 50%, extreme poverty cut by 70%, until our economic war on them has made things so much more dire there. So that's another reason we hate them, is they ended extreme poverty, or just about, which is fucking horrifying. I mean, you can't be okay with that, right? Like, you understand where I'm coming from. Like, you see someone giving, like, a homeless person, like, a $20 bill, and you're like, what the fuck is the matter with you? And then you punch the person giving out the money in the face. I mean, that's what I do. Because you can't, if you help poor people that much, yeah. So, remember that. See someone giving something to a homeless person, punch the person in the face. Uh, so down to Brazil, obviously another country that is helping us to undermine Venezuela and attack Venezuela. Brazil, who has a fascist leader that we helped put there, Bolsonaro. Brazil is also involved in the escalation as well. Then you have the U.S. tech giants, which have also gotten involved in this attack and escalation against Venezuela, because, you know, it's not enough that just the U.S. government is hurting this country. Let's get fucking Twitter in on the action, because Twitter's like, yeah, fuck those poor people in Venezuela. Let's help hurt them. Let's help hurt them. So Twitter has purged a bunch of accounts of Venezuelan officials, even just Venezuelan information outlets. Venezuela Analysis is one that was doing very good information. I mean, they're still around, but I think they deleted their Twitter account. So the tech giants now also piling on, attacking Venezuela for this October surprise, which is hilarious because many of these tech giants and the Democratic establishment say they want Trump out of office, right? Yet then they actually facilitate this attack on Venezuela October surprise, which some sources say Trump has been told by Marco Rubio that doing that, attacking Venezuela, will help him win Florida, which he needs to win. So he needs Florida. Attack on Venezuela would help him win Florida. So he's doing this to win the election, and yet the Democratic establishment is fine with it because they want to crush Venezuela. They're fine with that war footing. They're fine with economic war on Venezuela that Obama also did. They're fine with all of that. So they're actually helping Trump get reelected because they're so cool with war with Venezuela. How insane is that? That just goes to show you that what bothers the Democrats more than Trump in office is to allow a socialist nation, a moderately socialist nation, to exist in Latin America. That's more upsetting than Trump in office. So when they tell you they are the resistance to Trump, they mean we're the resistance to Trump, unless but we're also cool with, we'd rather have Trump in office and a continued obliteration of Latin America and obliteration of countries around the world. We'd rather that than Bernie Sanders in office or something like that. So moving on to the propaganda against Venezuela, here's an example of the shock doctrine, right? COVID-19 comes along and it's a pandemic. In an ideal world, countries would work together to defeat it, but the U.S. sees it as an opportunity. Our government, including Democrats and Trump's administration, view COVID-19, a pandemic of any form, as an opportunity to crush a nation and kill lots of people. So we have used COVID-19 to say, ha, 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 Venezuela, we aren't going to let you get medication. The treatment meds that people use for COVID-19, we've made them incredibly expensive. The testing is more expensive in Venezuela because of our economic war on them. Obviously not having fuel makes life more difficult in a pandemic. But here's a quote from the article. The Trump administration and think tanks like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which put out a report titled Venezuela Pandemic and Foreign Intervention in a Collapsing Narco State. Yeah, that doesn't sound like propaganda right there. Have been attempting to turn Venezuela's COVID-19 response into an issue of regional security. The Atlantic Council, considered to be NATO's think tank in Washington, held an event on August 13th with Admiral Fowler, in which he declared that the Maduro government is an urgent threat to democracy, economic stability, and the COVID-19 response. Yes, Venezuela, a country that was doing much better against COVID-19 until these various efforts of ours have been successful, and they now are grappling more with COVID-19, but still not as much as their neighbors. They are somehow the COVID-19 problem. They're the reason COVID-19 is in Latin America, even though that country is actually doing better against it than their neighboring countries. Here's a continued quote from the article. Yet it's ludicrous to claim that Venezuela is a COVID-19 threat. The country is doing significantly better than its neighbors in controlling both the spread of the disease and the number of casualties. And I'll just conclude with this from the article. President Trump's hawkish Venezuela policy is based around winning Florida, and many of the events detailed above have been put into motion to give the president the military option he's been threatening since August 2017. The stage is set for a disastrous October surprise, especially if Trump's chances for re-election look dim. Well, of course, Trump, even though the polls are rather close, 5% in many of the battleground states, to Trump, that's dim. Trump wants to, win by 20 points. So to him, this is a win-win. You attack Venezuela and you kill a bunch of innocent civilians. You maybe, or at least hope to bring down Maduro because you hate that goddamn socialist leader, and you get reelected because you win Florida and it helps you. Now, the Democrats, no sign of even standing up against this, no sign of even reporting on this. They won't even fucking talk about it. The closest you'll get is agreement of the propaganda against Venezuela. That is the closest you'll get from the Democrats in our government, because it's one fucking party. When are people going to get it? It's one party, and they agree on all this shit. So they're fine with Trump doing his best to destroy Venezuela. He could drop a goddamn bomb straight out of the sky on Venezuela and the Democrats wouldn't stand up against it, even though God knows how many innocent civilians it'd kill. These are murderous, rampaging thugs. And then they turn around and tell you how kind-hearted they are, how they're standing up for democracy, how they're standing up for stability, how they want to help the people by bombing them. So anyway, this could quite well be one of the bigger October surprises that Trump and his administration are fighting for. As many people know, Bolton, who used to be in the administration, Pompeo, Pence, they're all fighting for a continued hardship on Venezuela. Trump is the fucking dove in that administration on some of these issues. I mean, he's not really a dove. He's a fucking war-hawking asshole. But in this moment, often they're like, yeah, fucking bomb, go bomb that. Yeah, go bomb it. And he's like, yeah, maybe we won't bomb them. But anyway, the stage is set for the October surprise, and you're not getting this news from mainstream media. You're not getting it from even many alternative outlets. Ben Norton's a good one. Aaron Mate's a good one. And Mint Press usually covers this stuff as well. All right, that is your moment of clarity. To support the show, I'm not asking for money. Just share this video and share the video. Give it a thumbs up, and please hit the subscribe button and the bell. I do these every single weekday except sometimes. So if you miss one, just go to leecamp.com and you can catch the day's news. All right, keep fighting.